It's all good, whatever. Okay, we are recording now. No, the last, okay. All right, well, welcome everybody. Welcome back from spring break, which was last week. Hopefully everybody did something fun and got things done. I did hit the Nearpod or the Nearpod link. I put it in chat there. So if you want to jump on that, I'm going to share my screen here. And we will be starting. Let's see here. Make sure it doesn't wig out on me. Okay, looks like we're good. Very good. All right, just remember, this class is being recorded. There we are. So I gave you that warning. Classroom expectations, make sure you follow along with the Nearpod. Use the chat tool respectfully and appropriately, and also respond to questions and instructions the first time. Okay, so today's class, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be going over the difference between civil law and criminal law, okay? So they're kind of broken out into two different areas. Now, first, I want to go over the class, though, to where we're at. Remember, I always put classroom announcements. I put the recordings right there, so nice, easy, convenient way to find them if you need to get something caught up. The plan here is today's the 14th. As you see, spring break. I'm kind of envious. I wanted to stay on spring break, but that's okay. As you see, our next assignment, the assignment that I'm assigned today, will be due on the 20th, Wednesday, and that's where I zero it out. We'll have another live class on there and so forth going on there. There's a couple things on here. If you're a part-time student and a senior, I think you need to be done by the 2nd. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. So I'll make sure I have all the assignments assigned. You just need to make sure you finish that weekend, okay? Oh, I'm in March now. Okay, May. Last day for seniors, regular seniors, is the 18th, and the last day for everybody else is the 25th. Okay, so we are moving along where we don't have very much else to do, right? Which is nice. Okay, today, civil versus criminal law. You'll have a quiz at the end of it. We're going to go over kind of just some aspects of the quiz because I know some of you have struggled with kind of the language because it's very legal language, right? Maybe that's why we're talking about criminal law. But here are your 10 questions. Remember, you can always take these again and again until you get the score you desire. Okay, here we go. The objective we have for today is, given a quiz in the OLS, students will accurately answer multiple choice questions about civil and criminal cases with 80% accuracy across one trial. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the difference between civil and criminal cases. So the U.S. criminal justice system has a very clear rule that citizens need to follow, okay, when they are disputes about the laws or individual violations of these rules. They may find themselves involved in a civil or criminal case, or it could be both. What happens during the course of a civil and a criminal cases, basically in this unit, you will learn about the people involved in civil and criminal cases and the process of each trial. Okay, so that's what we're going to kind of do. So let's watch a little video that describes a little bit about the difference between the two.
Let's have a closer look at the differences between civil law and criminal law. In civil cases, the plaintiff, the party that brings the lawsuit or action, is a private party, such as an individual or a business. In criminal law, the plaintiff, also called the complainant in this context, is the government or the state, which acts as the prosecution. In both civil and criminal cases, the defendant is a private party. Again, either an individual or an organization. In order for a plaintiff to prevail in a civil lawsuit, there has to be a preponderance of evidence that supports the case and its alleged facts. The burden of proof is more stringent in criminal law. In criminal law, the test of evidence required is beyond a reasonable doubt. This makes it more difficult to secure a conviction, which, however, makes sense given that criminal sanctions can be more drastic than civil sanctions. In civil cases, the sanctions or remedies typically consist of either damages, injunctions, equitable remedies such as specific performance, or even a combination thereof. In criminal law, some of the main sanctions include incarceration or prison, fines and penalties, or even execution. Finally, civil and criminal law differ in certain respects when it comes to the underlying societal goals or public policies. Civil law is about compensation, first and foremost, but also about deterrence of future misconduct, and, to some extent, punishment. Punishment is normally not an important element of civil law, with the exception, however, of punitive damages in tort cases. Criminal law is normally not about compensation. Here, the strong emphasis lies on specific and general deterrence, that is, preventing the defendant as well as others from offending again. Additionally, criminal law has a strong punitive element. In the same vein, criminal law is said to have certain signaling and expressive functions. Society uses criminal law to convey social meanings and norms, making it clear that certain types of behavior are regarded as particularly reprehensible.
All right. So that kind of give you a little bit of a difference about there. This is going to be a civil law case we'll read about, but here's another famous case that basically there was two sides to it, okay? There was both a criminal charge brought against this person as well as a civil charge. Okay, who is familiar with the O.J. Simpson case? You can put in the chat. Is anybody familiar yet? Okay. So that's a pretty famous case, okay? He was found non-guilty or acquitted, I should say. He was acquitted criminally, okay? So you got the criminal charges that were brought against him, okay? So O.J. Simpson, just a little bit of background. He was a famous NFL football player for the Buffalo Bills, huge running back, made millions and millions of dollars, was living in California, and all of a sudden his wife and her friend went missing. Interesting, right? Anyways, there was quite a bit of evidence against O.J. Simpson, saying that he did, in fact, murder these two women. And anyways, the criminal case, if you go back to what the video talked about, it said you'd have to know with beyond a reasonable doubt in order for conviction, right? So he was what was called acquitted from that situation. So he did not face criminal charges because he was acquitted. But his wife's family, right, sued him on a civil level, and they won millions and millions of dollars from him, and he was convicted civilly for the wrongful death of his wife. Okay, so you got the two sides of it, right? So he actually never went to prison for that. Later, he actually did some other things and got put in prison anyways, and now he's out, and he kind of just stays off the radar right now. But that is a issue of where both a civil case and a criminal case can happen, okay? Let's talk about an example of another civil case. This is a famous case. It's kind of funny. I probably shouldn't laugh at these things. This case is so dumb, somebody said. All right, yep. Okay, so I'm just going to read it real quick. One of the most famous cases and controversial is the civil case in the last few decades was the case of Blk versus McDonald restaurants, which involved McDonald's coffee. In 1994, an elderly woman purchased a cup of coffee from McDonald's drive-thru, but spilt it on her lap. The coffee caused third-degree burns. The woman claims McDonald was at fault for serving her hot coffee. So she sued McDonald's, claiming that the coffee was hotter through the drive-thru than it was when purchased inside the restaurant. And that is hotter temperature caused her to suffer wounds. A judgment initially awarded the woman nearly $3 million, but the amount was reduced on appeal. So we got some comments already in the chat. I'll let you guys chat in a little bit. Somebody said that's user error. Yeah, pretty interesting for spilled coffee. I don't know what it was reduced to, but that would be what a civil charge would be. So this one is controversial, kind of a stupid case, but what are you guys' thoughts on it? I'll have you guys put that in the near pod real quick. So maybe she did it on purpose for the money. Maybe. Kind of hurts. Third-degree burns. Ugh. Wouldn't want to burn that. Maybe for $3 million, right? But it's interesting how the legal system works, because the civil case moves more to what needs to be put in legislation. So now, as you can see, when you get like a coffee or hot chocolate or something like that from one of these places, it will say there on it, caution hot, right? Or has some type of warning on it. Okay. So somebody said, it's supposed to be hot. What a dumb case. Yep. User error. That's my opinion. It's coffee. What do you expect? To be cold. Okay. So I can kind of see why you're there. The way also judges, so there's some judges that make different rulings, okay? And for big corporations, okay, like McDonald's or other big entities, some of these judges feel like it's their position, because they're private companies, to make sure of user safety. And so that's why they award like such big amounts of things, like $3 million. You're like, really? $3 million for spilled coffee? But what they're trying to do is send a message to McDonald's and other corporations that's saying, hey, you need to make sure that your products are safe and usable, or you're going to get things like this, right? So, okay, some other comments we have. I think if she ordered cold coffee and she got burnt, and that'd be good reason to go to court. If not, it's on her. Okay. Coffee is not supposed to be hot enough to cause third-degree burns. Okay. There we go. I like how you guys are thinking on both sides of this now. Stupid. It's supposed to be hot. It's not their fault for doing their job. Okay. My Diet Coke was colder than it should have been and gave me a tongue frostbite. Maybe you got a case there, right? Go to a doctor, get all that stuff checked out, visit an attorney that is sue happy. Okay, so that's a civil case. Okay, a good example of a civil case and how it works. Okay, so the civil case process, this is how it works. Civil cases are those that involve disputes between individuals. Okay, they usually involve money, business, real estate, and other properties or personal injury. They also encompass family law, such as divorce courts, custody hearings, and estate cases. For example, you might bring a civil case against an individual who injured you in a car accident. So that would be on the civil side. This is kind of how it works. The timeline of court cases, how it works. You got the initial pleadings, which is called the complaint and the summons. You have pretrial practices, which is discovery and the deposition. Civil trial, we got bench trial, jury trials, and damages, and then you have the post trial, which is the verdict. I have a cousin that's an attorney, and he tells me that a lot of them do not make it a trial. These pre-trial practices, when we talk about deposition, discovery, that kind of stuff, it usually goes to some type of settling before it will go to an actual trial and go from there. Okay, let's jump into a criminal case, right? So let me read this to you. Bobby's uncle was arrested for fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit fraud, and mail fraud. Bobby's aunt was also arrested for conspiracy to commit fraud and for being an accessory. Bobby was confused by something that happened to his family, and he wanted to find out just what was going on. He decided to do some research about what would happen to his aunt and uncle next. Crime in the United States is high compared to other nations. The rate of robberies is nearly twice as high as in Canada or France. The rate of homicide in the U.S. is nearly 7 times that of other nations. And the American people are now more than ever aware of all of this. We see crime on the news every day, and many of our lives have been affected by crime in some way. Whether it's the increase in the use of surveillance cameras or the use of something stolen from us. But how do we, as a society, control crime? The United States has a complex legal system that serves to prevent and protect people. Okay? All right. So that would be a criminal case. I'm sorry, I should have explained that. So anything that's against somebody else, that's illegal action, right? That would need to go against the state. Okay. But as we see, we have a lot of laws. This is something we've talked about in this class. We have a ton of laws in the United States, and not all of them can be upheld, and not everybody breaks some type of law at some point in time in their life. It's just inevitable. It's just basically if they, so jaywalking, right? Good example. Like, you've probably jaywalked before. You've probably like, if you're driving, a driver, you sped or you forgot to turn on your blinker, right? But they have severities, right, of what we're looking at. So the classification of crimes. Another purpose of the U.S. crime justice system is to classify the type of severity of the criminal offense. Crimes can be classified by their type of offense, such as crimes against a person or crimes against property, or by the amount of punishment each offense is worth. Okay. Crimes are divided into felonies, misdemeanors, and violations, and also liability it talks about. Okay. So, for example, felonies are crimes that are more severe in nature and are punishable by a year or more in prison. An example of felony is a murder. Okay. And we kind of went over this, I believe, in our first lesson where we went over kind of felonies and stuff. A misdemeanor is crimes of those that are not as severe as felonies, and the punishment is usually less than a year in jail or just some monetary fine. An example of a misdemeanor is public intoxication. Violations. Okay, a violations is a small legal infraction and usually only results in a monetary fine. So most traffic crimes are an example of violations such as speeding. Okay, I'm gonna admit I have got a speeding ticket before, or 2 or 3, right? Not many, or I couldn't be a driver's ed instructor still. Okay, so that is something you gotta think. And then the last one is liability. Okay, is the state of being responsible for a behavior, action, or another individual. So, for example, when you're driving and you get in an accident, and if it's your fault, you're liable for those damages, and that's why we carry like car insurance and stuff like that. Okay, and you carry like other insurances as well sometimes, like on your homeowner's policy, insurance policy, you have liability coverage to cover you against those kind of things. Okay, so there's different roles in criminal cases. Okay, one is police. The police find the offender and gather the evidence pertinent to the crime. They make the arrest and will also be a witness during the trial. You have the defendant. The defendant is those that accuse the offender. Okay, he is the assistant throughout the trial process by his defense attorney. Okay, you have principals. Okay, in criminal offenses, the persons who are directly responsible for the crime are known as the principal in the first degree. There are also ones who planned and executed the offense. A second type of principal is also known as a principal in the second degree. The offenders are present with a crime committed, but did not actually participate in the crime. Okay, so like somebody that maybe is like the brains behind the operation, right? But they didn't actually carry out that actual offense. So you got first degree and second degree. And then you have an accessory. Okay, an accessory before the fact is an individual who aids another in committing a crime before the crime is committed. So for example, if you had a key to get into a building that somebody wanted to rob and you made a copy of that key or gave the key to somebody, you would be known as an accessory. Okay, some other rules. We have the victim. Victims are have several rights during a trial proceeding, including the right to be informed of court proceedings, the right to attend the trial, and the right to be heard in the trial. You have the defense attorney. The defense attorney prepares and assists the offenders throughout the trial. And you also have the prosecuting attorney. The prosecuting attorney urges on the behalf of the victims in the criminal trial. You also have witnesses, the witnesses who give testimony, their statements under oath and what they saw and when the crime occurred and what actually happened. Then some other big ones. You have the jury. The jury is 12 impartial individuals who are given the task of deciding what actually happened and whether the offender is a guilty party. So it'd be really hard. I've never had to have jury duty. I hope I don't. But that would be something if you had to really do that. Okay, a judge. Judge is they act as the moderator for all actions that occur within a trial. They ensure that the actions of both attorneys fall within the parameters of legal code, and they also are outlined as necessary corrections if a guilty verdict is delivered. Okay, as we go throughout the criminal proceedings, you first have the investigation and arrest, as you kind of see in this picture right here. Usually there has to be some type of thing, like if a police officer sees you doing something, that's one thing, right? But there has to be some type of evidence. With evidence, you might have to get warrants to search a car. They'll also have different rights. Remember when we talked about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, Miranda rights need to be given to you to let you know what you're being charged of and for what about. Okay, then you will have the initial hearing where you will go in and there they usually can set like bail or not. You've probably heard of bail. And you can bond for bail if you need to or something like that. There's also an arraignment where you can go and you can plead whether you want to plead guilty or not guilty to a set of charges. They also have what's called a plea bargain, where you can meet with the other attorney, the attorneys meet and say, hey, how do we want to get out of this, right? Is there agreement that we can come to, just saying, hey, we'll just pay a fine and get out of it, or we'll do something on our end to make stuff. Okay, then you have a criminal trial. The criminal trial, if it goes to that, remember there is a jury of impartial persons. They will be delivered evidence by both sides, and they will have facts that they have to kind of basically, that the attorneys need to prove or disprove. And remember, a criminal trial, they have to be convicted beyond a reasonable doubt. So everybody of those jury witnesses, or the jury, have to convict, have a conviction, right? If one of them is that, they're found acquitted of the actions. Okay, that was a lot to cover, but that's what we're kind of going to go over today. So this is basically what you do. So the first one talks about the McDonald's fun case that we talked about, right? And it'll just say, hey, what is this kind of an example of, right? Some of these things, there's a lot of legal terms, so you might have to look up words, okay? It's meant to be a little bit harder because this is a concentrator class for this. But I'll have you kind of go through it. If you don't do great on it, just redo it. If you keep doing it too many times, just send me an email and just say, hey, what did I miss? I just kind of need a little bit of help on it. So, okay, that's all I got for you today. I appreciate it. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'll stay after for a while.